What I find most interesting about the people, well, a particular group of people who are cheering on the destruction of the Department of Education, is that these people are about 20 years behind the eight ball, and they are cheering to their own destruction without even realizing it. For decades, there has been a market attack on since the end of segregation, there has been an attack on the public school education system. And as these people are trying to tear down and dismantle the public school education system and the Department of Education, what they have been doing is sending their kids to private school because they are able to afford private education for their children. So while this demographic of people, while they're telling you that the Department of Education is horrible for our kids, they're teaching our kids all the CRT, they're misleading them, they're indoctrinating them, etc., they're telling your kids not to go to college, but where they're sending their kids to colleges, universities, and institutions of higher education. What I find interesting about this is that there have been that kind of solidly middle class people who have been able to pull their children out of the public school system and put them in private schools. However, due to the increasing cost of living and inflation, salaries and wages not rising to match the cost of living and inflation, a lot of people will find themselves falling out of the middle class, and they will be unable to afford the privilege and the advantage of private schools like people 10, 15, 20 years ago were able to afford. Your children and your children's children will now be going to these public schools that are poorly funded, even more poorly funded than they are already now, overpopulated. If y'all thought classrooms with 30 students was bad, be prepared to see that number rise. And the people who voted for this, thinking that it was going to benefit them, are once again 20 years behind the eight ball. And I have a feeling this is gonna be like crack, because it was one thing when it was just impacting Black people and marginalized communities and brown people, but now that the white kids will start to be poorly educated, now that the white kids won't be able to read, 10 to 15 years from now, we're going to be seeing a whole different tune being sung. Just like when crack was ravaging Black and brown communities, it was the disease of their community. It was something wrong with them as a people. But when when that methamphetamine and those opioids got a chokehold on those other communities, all of a sudden, this is a problem. This is a national crisis, and we need to do something about this. Mark my words, 10 to 15 years from now.